Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Pajajanarandana. Yashodanandana Pajajanarandana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Bhad Paramahansa, Parivajikacharya, Ashtoto, the Rishi Srimad Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa, Parivajikacharya, Ashtoto, the Rishi Srimad Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. The Mondays are always questionable exactly where we are. I think we're on 22, right? Thank you. Okay. On this 9th day of November 2020 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 3 entitled Karma Yoga, text 22, page 159. Name patasti kartavyam trishu lokeshu kinchana nanavaptamavaptavyam varta eva cha karmani. Name parthasti kartavyam trishu lokeshu kinchana nanavaptamavaptavyam varta eva cha karmani. Name parthasti kartavyam trishu lokeshu kinchana nanavaptamavaptavyam varta eva cha karmani. Name partasti kartavyam Trishu lokeshu kinchana nanavaptam avaptavyam Parta eva cha karmani Name partasti kartavyam Trishu lokeshu kinchana nanavaptam avaptavyam Parta eva cha karmani Name partasti kartavyam Trishu lokeshu kinchana nanavaptam avaptavyam Parta eva cha karmani Name partasti kartavyam Trishu lokeshu kinchana nanavaptam avaptavyam Parta eva cha karmani Name partasti kartavyam Trishu lokeshu kinchana nanavaptam avaptavyam Parta eva cha karmani Ed. Name partasti kartavyam Trishu lokeshu kinchana nanavaptam avaptavyam Parta eva cha karmani not may mine Parta O son of Pritha Asti there is kartavyam prescribed duty Trishu in the three lokeshu planetary systems Kinchana any nothing Anavaptam wanted Avaptavyam to be gained Varte I am engaged Eva certainly Cha also Karmani in prescribed duty. Translation. O son of Pritha, there is no work prescribed for me within all the three planetary systems, nor am I in want of anything, nor have I a need to obtain anything, and yet I am engaged in prescribed duties. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is described in the Vedic literatures as follows. So let's see if we can all chant together. Tam Ishwaranam Padamam Maheshwaram Tam Devatanam Padamam Chadaivatam Patim Patinam Padamam Parastad Vidama Devam Bhuvanesha Midhyam Natasya Kayam Karanam Cha Vidyate Natat Samascham Hadikascha Drishyate Parasya Shakti Vivadhaiva Shruyate Swabhaviki Jnana Balakriyacha. The Supreme Lord is the controller of all other controllers, and He is the greatest of all the diverse planetary leaders. Everyone is under His control. All entities are delegated with particular power only by the Supreme Lord. They are not supreme themselves. He is also worshipable by all demigods and is the supreme director of all directors. Therefore He is transcendental to all kinds of material leaders and controllers and is worshipable by all. There is no one greater than Him, and He is the supreme cause of all causes. He does not possess a bodily form like that of an ordinary living entity. There is no difference between His body and His soul. He is absolute. All His senses are transcendental. Any one of His senses can perform the action of any other sense. Therefore no one is greater than Him or equal to Him. His potencies are multifarious, and thus His deeds are automatically performed as a natural sequence. This is from the Shvetashvatara Upanishad 6, 7-8. Since everything is in full opulence in the personality of Godhead and is existing in full truth, there is no duty for the Supreme Personality of Godhead to perform. One who must receive the results of work has some designated duty. But one who has nothing to achieve within the three planetary systems certainly has no duty. And yet, Lord Krishna is engaged on the battlefield of Kurukshetra as the leader of the Kshatriyas because the Kshatriyas are duty-bound to give protection to the distressed. Although he is above all the regulations of the revealed scriptures, he does not do anything that violates the revealed scriptures. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So, once again, we look in the context here, and what Krishna is saying in the previous verse is that the great souls, even though they may be beyond the need of performing activities, they do so anyway to lead the people in general. He refers to Janaka Maharaj, who's the father of Sita, that he attained perfection solely by performance of prescribed duties. Because the principle is in the previous verse, 21, very often quoted, Yad yadatadadi shrestha tatadede evetirojana sayat pramanam kurate lokastadanavartate. That there are naturally leaders in society, especially the top leader. And by the nature of things, people look to the leader to give examples of how to act and how to behave in society. And so whatever he does, acharati, the shrestha is a respectable leader. Then the people follow in general. He sets the pramana. You remember we discussed this word. It's a very important word. Pramana means a source of evidence for how to act and how to understand reality. The books that we're reading, these revealed scriptures, are pramana for us. They're evidence of how we can understand ourselves, God, this world, the relationship, everything. Trusting the Shastra is like a very essential, foundational principle for what we're doing. Why? Because we can't really confirm much of this by our senses, at least not at the beginning until we become purified. And so therefore the element of faith is essential. So having faith in Krishna's words and having faith in the words as presented by the pure devotee is foundational for us. And if we have that faith, then we can get prameyas. We can understand, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is one of the reasons why that was restored. Probably, if you read when we read the Bhagavad Gita, you get to the first point in which Krishna speaks, and it says Sri Bhagavan Vacha, and probably half the purport is about that word Bhagavan. Because if you think about it, believing that Krishna is God is like half the battle right there. There's a whole book that Rupa Goswami wrote called Lago Bhagavatamrita, solely and wholly dedicated to proving that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He talks about a lot of other personalities in Godhead, and he proves through Shastra and quoting and this and that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God. And in the Bhagavatam itself, there's one line that's known to be what is called, Rupa Goswami, I think, gave it this name, the Paribhas Sutra, like the essential statement around which the entire scripture is built. Ete Changsa Kala Pungsa Krishnas Tu Bhagavan Swayam. This is one line of the verses are actually two lines as they're presented here. So, does anyone know the context of this verse? This is really important. It's, I believe, 3rd chapter, text 28 in the first canto. And he's going through a list. Do we know the Dash avatars? 10 main avatars. They include Kurma and the fish incarnation, and of course Nrsingadeva is there, and Balaram and Krishna are part of the list. Kalki comes near the end. There's others, Ramchandra, of course. So he goes through all of them, including Krishna, because Krishna takes his role as a Leela avatar in one sense. And then at the end, after he goes through the whole list, he gives this verse. Ete Changsa Kala Pungsa Krishna Stu Bhagavan. All of these that I just listed are either Angsha or Kala. They're either expansions of Krishna, plenary expansions, means full, or they're partial expansions. Just like I think Narada Muni is in the list, the Kumaras are there in this list, which is expanded. There's more than 10, So the Kumaras are living entities, but they're empowered. They're Shakti-abesh, invested with power. That's what that means. So he goes through all of them, including Ramchandra, who we know is Krishna, is Vishnu Tattva. So he would be a Kala, I believe, a plenary expansion. But Krishna himself is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan, who's full in the 6 opulence. The definition there's a verse Prabhupada would quote that's accepted in our Sampradaya, defining what the Bhagavan means. Who is Bhagavan? Bhagavan means the possessor of all these opulences, these 6 opulences, in full. The others possess them to some degree, just like Nrsingadev certainly possesses the strength, a guy who could argue with his strength, But he doesn't have all of Krishna's, astounding beauty to the degree that Krishna has. So these 6 hours, so Krishna has in full. So Krishna is speaking now. Now, if you understand this principle and you accept Shri Bhagavan Vacha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said. Now, in this book, this was one of the first books printed. It was the first, certainly, major Shastra that was printed in ISKCON. And Prabhupada was very eager to get the Bhagavad Gita out in the unabridged edition and everything like that. Finally happened in 1972. That was 6 years after he started the movement. It was a big struggle. You didn't have any, a bank of Sanskrit scholars who'd, spent years studying, which he had later on. Anyway, so I'm not going to go into the whole history of how it was produced, but we ended up, the editors, and they had some, permission from Prabhupada. You could borrow from other already printed. He's mainly concerned that the purports get out, as they are. The translations are basically the same. So, instead of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this editor said, well, here in this other Gita, we have this beautiful little phrase, the Blessed Lord said. Why don't we use that? It's first of all, it's a lot shorter, and so that was it. Now, Prabhupada didn't, prohibited. I mean, the book was printed, he read from it and everything. But there is record of him saying, why they say the Blessed Lord said. Should be the Supreme Personality of Godhead said. Why they say, He wasn't happy with it, but he had to tolerate a lot in those days. So, bringing out that this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and believing that, then, as Prabhupada mentions at the beginning in the introduction and the preface, one has to accept the Bhagavad Gita in the mood that Arjuna did. And that's, chapter 10, Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram, Paramam Bhavan. You are the Supreme Brahman, you are, the Supreme Abode, the Master of everything. He accepted him as God. So, with that as a preface, now Krishna is explaining, I don't have anything. And it's a verse we just read. I don't have to, I don't have any reason to act in this world. I don't want anything. There's no work prescribed. How can you prescribe work for the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Something is prescribed by a superior to an inferior. The very concept of duty means that you're accepting a higher principle, authority, and you accept it, even though it may not, it may interfere with your life. Like if you have, doing World War II, say, everyone agreed, well, we had to go to war. All right, I'm going to risk my life, for the country. I accept this higher duty and like that. A husband, accepts a duty. Wife now accepts a duty. I have to work, to support the family. It's a duty. You can give up on your duty and just, violate social norms and everything. But the duty is accepted from a higher authority. Krishna don't know higher authority, so he has no duty to perform. Natasya karyam karanam cha vidyate. That comes up in these 2 verses we read. It's often quoted. There's no one equal to or greater than him can be seen. And how does he do things? Parasya shaktir. He has all of these different energies, material and spiritual. Vibhadaiva means of different varieties. Shruyate, we understand from the Shruti, we understand from the Vedas. And what does he do with those energies? Swabhavaki jnana bala kriyacha. That automatically, by these energies, by his will, all these things are going on. The whole material world is working, the spiritual world is working, his will is being carried out. So for someone like that, there's no question of duty, and yet, to set an example, especially comes out in his Dwarka Leela, where Krishna would get up, at 4, no later than 4, and leave the bed, from his queens and go and meditate. And he's meditating on himself. That's that doesn't mean, Barbara said, but that doesn't mean we should meditate on ourselves in the Krishna book. So and then he goes to the Sabha. It describes how the 16,108 palaces with 16,108 queens, and all of them have a Krishna. But when it's time to gather for the Sabha, all of them come out of the different palaces and merge into one Krishna. And that Krishna goes to the governing hall that was there, And there's the king who he installed. Who's Kamsa's father again? Ugrasen, Ugrasen, exactly. And so many others have joined there, and Krishna participates, So he's accepting the duties, and he said, because if I didn't do that, I think that's the next verse. Yeah. Mama Vartmana Vartante, people would follow in my footsteps. So it's on my shoulders to be a good example, even though intrinsically I have nothing to gain. So Krishna is also teaching us, because as soon as we come into the community of devotees, we have a responsibility not only to ourselves, but to the others who are part of the community, the ashram, the sangha, whatever you want to call it. And so this, and Krishna encourages us in this. This is what it means, that there's a responsibility there. As we're feeling the benefit, we also give the benefit, and part of that giving of the benefit is being a good example for others in the sangha. Otherwise, if everyone's doing his own thing, then it falls apart. You see, and always the guiding light is the words of the guru and the words of the shastra. And this things stay together. So this is what Krishna is saying, and he's encouraging Arjuna to do the same thing, to be a good example and show, because he's a leader, so Arjuna should fight. That's the whole idea. Okay, anything else here? If not, then we'll go on. Yadi aham navarteyam jatu karman yatanvitaha mama vartmano vartante manushya partasarvashaha. For if I ever fail to engage in carefully performing prescribed duties, O Partha, certainly all men would follow my path. Purport. In order to keep the balance of social tranquility for progress in spiritual life, there are traditional family usages meant for every civilized man. Although such rules and regulations are for the conditioned souls and not Lord Krishna, because he descended to establish the principles of religion, he followed the prescribed rules. Otherwise, common men would follow in his footsteps, because he is the greatest authority. From the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is understood that Lord Krishna was performing all the religious duties at home and out of home as required of a householder. So this is the Dwarka Leela. Now, of course, the natural question is, but what about his Vrindavan Leela? He broke all these norms. He went out with other men's wives in the middle of the night. Right? So there seems to be a contradiction. This question comes up right in the Rasa dance. If you recall, Parikshit asked Shukadev, how is he who is the enunciator and the definer and the observer of all these moral rules, now he's breaking them? And so Shukadev makes the point that for powerful souls, he gives the example of Shiva, who drank the ocean of poison, and what was the result? Little blue line on his neck. That was it. It's a powerful poison. If we just touch a drop, we die. So he's saying that those who are not controllers, who are powerful, should be very careful to follow the rules and regulations. Just as we shouldn't imitate Shiva in drinking the poison and think that we can violate these rules, because we're very minute and we need to follow. So the conclusion is, we should follow the example of the great souls and powerful souls when their activities comport with their instructions. Otherwise, we should know, well, this is the special case, the Leela. It's at a different level. The dancing with the gopis. It's not something we should imitate. We had someone here, I'm not going to mention any names, who somehow they came up with this comment about Krishna's activities. Yes, Krishna came in order to show us the example of how to live, and it didn't dawn on me till like a day later what was going on with that. I said, "Oh, yeah, great example, rasa dance." It's an excuse to try. No, this is what we're meant to start with, the Bhagavad Gita and the rules and regulations, moral rules and everything, and gradually become purified, and then we can, a long time later, enter into the mood of these intimate pastimes. Because it's not what it looks like. There's no immorality there because these are all Krishna's energies. They're in their spiritual bodies. I'm just reading the Rasa Dance chapters in the Krishna book. Probably there's a whole explanation of how this is not ordinary sex life. It's like that. So otherwise, we run the risk of becoming degraded without really understanding. But here it's very straightforward. Krishna is giving us the instructions, and in Dwarka Leela especially, he's following them, and we should also follow. So what happens now? People will follow my. So the next, it's very interesting because he uses an argument that Arjun used for not fighting. Utsideyo ime loka nakoyam karma chedaham sankarasya kartasyam upahanyam imapajaha. If I did not perform prescribed duties, all these worlds would be put to ruination. I would be the cause of creating unwanted population, and I would thereby destroy the peace of all living beings. Sound familiar? Arjun was saying, I'll be destroying it. He was using an excuse not to fight. Purport. Varna Sankara is unwanted population which disturbs the peace of the general society. In order to check the social disturbance, there are prescribed rules and regulations by which the population can automatically become peaceful and organized for spiritual progress in life. When Lord Krishna descends, naturally he deals with such rules and regulations in order to maintain the prestige and necessity of such important performances. The Lord is the father of all living entities, and if the living entities are misguided, indirectly, the responsibility goes to the Lord. Therefore, whenever there is general disregard of regulative principles, the Lord himself descends and corrects the society. That we'll hear at the beginning of the next chapter. This famous verse, everyone knows this. Yadayadahi dharma. We should, however, note carefully that although we have to follow in the footsteps of the Lord, we still have to remember that we cannot imitate him. This is a very important distinction, following in the footsteps and imitating. Following and imitating are not on the same level. We cannot imitate the Lord by lifting Govardhan Hill, as the Lord did in his childhood. It is impossible for any human being. We have to follow his instructions, but we may not imitate him at any time. Srimad Bhagavatam 10:31 affirms. This may be this is what I cited before. I'll say you say Naitat samachaje jatu manasapi anishwaraha minusyat jacharan naudhyad Yata rudro dijam visham Ishwaranam bachak satyam Tataiva charitang kvachit Tesham yat swatvacho yuktam Buddhimang tat samacharet. This is exactly what I said before. One should simply follow the instructions of the Lord and his empowered servants. Their instructions are all good for us, and any intelligent person will perform them as instructed. However, one should guard against trying to imitate their actions. One should not try to drink the ocean of poison in imitation of Lord Shiva. We should always consider the position of the Ishwaras, or those who can actually control the movements of the sun and the moon, as superior. Without such power, one cannot imitate the Ishwaras, who are super powerful. Lord Shiva drank poison to the extent of swallowing an ocean. But if any common man tries to drink even a fragment of such poison, he will be killed. There are many pseudo-devotees of Lord Shiva who want to indulge in smoking ganja, marijuana, and similar intoxicating drugs, forgetting that by so imitating the acts of Lord Shiva, they are calling death very near. Similarly, there are some pseudo-devotees of Lord Krishna who prefer to imitate the Lord in his Rasa Leela, or dance of love, forgetting their inability to lift Govardhan Hill. It is best, therefore, that one not try to imitate the powerful, but simply follow their instructions, nor should one try to occupy their post without qualification. There are so many, quote, incarnations of God without the power of the Supreme Godhead. So this, I think we get the point here, is that we should follow Krishna's instructions and his example when they comport with those instructions. which is in his later Leela, it's much more like that. Okay, moving on. Asakta karmanya vidvangso yata kurvanti bharata koyad vidvangsa tha saktash chikeshu lokasangraham. As the ignorant perform their duties with attachment to results, the learned may similarly act, but without attachment, for the sake of leading people on the right path. Purport. A person in Krishna consciousness and a person not in Krishna consciousness are differentiated by different desires. A Krishna conscious person does not do anything which is not conducive to development of Krishna consciousness. He may even act exactly like the ignorant person, who is too much attached to material activities, but one is engaged in such activities for the satisfaction of his sense gratification, whereas the other is engaged for the satisfaction of Krishna. Therefore, the Krishna conscious person is required to show the people how to act and how to engage the results of action for the purpose of Krishna consciousness. And that was a very important part of Prabhupada's founding the movement. He wanted to train up, in later times he said, we want to train up some Brahmins, because there's no head of society. The society is meant to be led by the learned Brahmins who are not fruitive. The wealth of the Brahmins is vairagya, on austerity and detachment. And when the Kshatriyas, the leaders of society, military and especially, the managers, listen to the Brahmins and the Brahmins are pure, then society can, prosper properly. Today, there's nothing like that. So Prabhupada wanted to train up some Brahmins who could lead society, could be seen as leaders and actually give good instruction and advice. So that's includes the activity, because this is after all the Karma Yoga chapter, so it all boils down to what are you doing, and as he said, one should, those who are learned should act without attachment for the sake of leading people on the right path. How can one be peaceful and happy in the world without being attached to all these material things? That's a very important countervailing force to the assumption that everyone has. I have to have a certain amount of money, I have to have certain this, I have to have this in order to be happy. But devotees can show how one can be satisfied and happy in life with minimal material things, and giving their efforts over to glorifying the Lord. And that's a great example because for people to see the example of the devotees. I mean, basically, in our contact with outsiders, now of course we have the COVID going, it's diminished. But the philosophy is too much, But the actual devotees, their personality, who they are, that comes out in the one-to-one interaction. And that's what intrigues them about the book or, the temple or whatever it is. So there's no substitute for that. And that can only come through following the principles and being strict in our activities and actually becoming purified. That purity means that Krishna is shining more through you, through your personality. And after all, it's Krishna who's the attraction in everything. And everything that's attractive is Krishna. So that's a really important point. So the ignorant perform the attachment, so the learned, those will perform similar activities but without attachment. So people lead people on the right path. Okay. Nabuddhi bedam janayed ajnanam karma sanginam joshiyet sarva karmani vidvan yukta samacharan. So as not to disrupt the minds of ignorant men attached to the fruit of results of prescribed duties, a learned person should not induce them to stop work. Rather, by working in the spirit of devotion, he should engage them in all sorts of activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness. Purport. Vedaischa sarva hameva vedya. This is the end of all Vedic rituals. All rituals, all performances of sacrifices, and everything that is put into the Vedas, including all direction for material activities, are meant for understanding Krishna, who is the ultimate goal of life. But because the conditioned souls do not know anything beyond sense gratification, they study the Vedas to that end. But through fruitive activities and sense gratification regulated by the Vedic rituals, one is gradually elevated to Krishna consciousness. Therefore, a realized soul in Krishna consciousness should not disturb others in their activities or understanding, but he should act by showing how the results of all work can be dedicated to the service of Krishna. The learned Krishna-conscious person may act in such a way that the ignorant person working for sense gratification may learn how to act and how to behave. Although the ignorant man is not to be disturbed in his activities, a slightly developed Krishna-conscious person may directly be engaged in the service of the Lord without waiting for other Vedic formulas. For this fortunate man, there is no need to follow the Vedic rituals, because by direct Krishna consciousness one can have all the results one would otherwise derive from following one's prescribed duties. So this is, if you think about it, this is how this movement has gone on. The Prabhupada conceived it that way. You know, here you come into a society that's about as far away from the Vedic culture as you can imagine. And you have, you're dealing with people who are taking intoxication, breaking all of the principles. What's the hope? Well, the hope is the purifying force of the holy name, because there's no restrictions. It's not you have to do this, and then chant Hare Krishna. No. Chant Hare Krishna and everything follows. And Prabhupada had that full faith in the holy name. He stated that in that poem. I have full faith in the holy, and he showed it. And he just kept chanting, and looking for that audience, and finally found it in Lower East Side in America in 1966 in New York. A small crew, but it was enough to launch the movement. Because then he had Native Americans, intelligent, many of them intelligent, competent, materially. And when that energy was directed in spreading Krishna consciousness, it became a powerful force. And they were able to, interest others. That how that you always come. I just come back to those two wonderful verses of Rupa Goswami, the ladder from faith to love. Adau Shaddha. You know those yet, Alex? Adau Shaddha. Important. So beginning with faith, but this is preliminary faith. Prabhupada says more like a respect, a little regard, enough to bring you into the association of devotees. So Adau Shaddha, that sadhu sangha. Then you come into this, and you hear. And then you say, well, why don't you try this bhajan? This is all coming from Hare Krishna. Well, how do you chant? Well, stay here. I got some beads for you. Yeah, you do like this. How do you get? Oh, okay. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And that's the beginning. That and of course kirtan, which is usually first. So from there, the purification starts. We have the understanding that the whole process is one of purification. We're only in this condition because of our contamination by the modes of nature, which are coming up in this next verse. So if it's a purification process, then what's the most powerful process of purification? Hearing and chanting, So there's no prerequisite. You just came walking off the street. You came down from your last LSD trip. Come on, Prabhu, come into kirtan, Hare Krishna. Yeah, you can dance. No hard and fast rules. So that's why the process works. It's cut through all of this. Okay, you got to go through the varnashram, and go through worshiping this god, this goddess. No, none of that is necessary. Cutting through the whole thing. This is Lord Chaitanya's movement. So, and then one, can come to the point of working, just like, yeah, I can sweep the floor, and help out. Okay, but come on, then we'll take some prasad. And before you're doing service. It's selfless service. The fruit, the clean floor, you're not getting paid for it, Then, Krishna from inside the heart, he's got, it gives you this little dollop of bliss, Hey, this is much better than sweeping the floor down in the bar. I got my $7.50, big deal, which I didn't spend in the bar. I opened up the bath back to Godhead just by sweeping the floor. Anyway, so that's how this movement works. Therefore, the Krishna conscious person is required to show the people how to act. I think yeah. And 26 we did 26, right? Yeah. All right. Okay, next verse. Really often quoted. Prabhupada quote this all the time. Bhakate kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimhudatma kartaham iti mannite. The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. Purport. Two persons, one in Krishna consciousness and the other in material consciousness, working on the same level, may appear to be working on the same platform, but there is a wide gulf of difference in their respective positions. The person in material consciousness is convinced by false ego that he is the doer of everything. He does not know that the mechanism of the body is produced by material nature, which works under the supervision of the Supreme Lord. The materialistic person has no knowledge that ultimately he is under the control of Krishna. The person in false ego takes all credit for doing everything independently, and that is the symptom of his nescience. He does not know that this gross and subtle body is the creation of material nature under the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as such, his bodily and mental activities should be engaged in the service of Krishna, in Krishna consciousness. The ignorant man forgets that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is known as Rishikesha, or the master of the senses of the material body. For due to his long misuse of the senses in sense gratification, he is factually bewildered by the false ego, which makes him forget his eternal relationship with Krishna. So this will be further explained in a few verses when we get to the end of the chapter. There's 6 or 7 verses about kama and how material desire, and of course acting with material desire, covers your knowledge. And that's what he's describing here. That with the false sense of self, which is built on the sense gratification, right? You're in ahankar. Ahankar means I'm the doer, but we're not. So we have a false sense of who we are. We're thinking with this body, and therefore the interests of the body are my interests, and therefore let me please the senses and make everything comfortable like that. You know, that's the false ego, and one is bewildered by that, completely bewildered. Vimuda, the soul is bewildered, and we're thinking that I'm the independent doer. We're forgetting how fragile we are, how conditional is our very ability to just move. You know, what to speak of doing all these things. And that's such a huge illusion when you actually realize it. We're helpless. The body is this fragile little instrument. And we're thinking, oh yeah, I can do so many things independently. But actually everything is being done by just think of what we're doing right now. Many of us are just sitting, not doing much of anything, but a lot is going on in this body, just so that we can just stay awake, live from moment to moment. I don't think people have thought about breathing so much as they have in the last 8 months since this thing happened. When do you really think about breathing? Breathe. And then, but no, it's not automatic. Some little crazy virus gets in there and you can't breathe anymore. Then what happens to all your plans and all your sense of your independence and everything? Down. You realize how dependent you are on that the body's functioning nicely, the environment, that you have pure air, pure water, pure food, pure land. And all of those are problematic. So that sense of dependence is part of Krishna consciousness. Realizing how Krishna is giving us at every moment our ability just to live from moment to moment. And how it's all coming from him. We'll learn in the 7th chapter, Bhuma, Apa, Olam, Navayo. The earth, water, fire, air, ether, solid matter, the liquids, the gases, everything that our body's made of that's functioning. Fire, electricity. Where is it coming from? The very mind, which is also an element, subtle, that we're using. When you really believe the Bhagavad Gita and you know, this is Krishna's gift, this whole body is very it belongs to Krishna. Let me use it in his service. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevan probably refers to that. Serving the master of the senses with the senses. Now, we shouldn't forget that opens up the channel to transcendental happiness and ultimately bliss. That's the natural result of that. Just as the famous analogy Prabhupada would give so many times, the story. The senses of the body. They're working, they have vitality and they have energy because they feed the stomach. The stomach, gets all the food and so forth. So you heard, the famous story that the senses went on strike, right? Right here, where I'm sitting, there was a devotee named Pani Bhushan, who traveled with the Maduras, the Festival of India, for several years. And he was very into plays, he had that artistic sense, So when he came through SanDiego, he did a one-man play of this. Now, we set up a little table with some chairs, and there was some fruit on there. And so the idea is that the senses, the hands, the legs, the eyes, everything, well, we're doing all the work, and working hard, getting the money, going to Sprouts, getting the food, and then we put it all into the stomach, and we don't enjoy any of it. So we're going on strike, So they went on strike, and gradually, they wanted to enjoy directly. So he's under this table. They had there was a table, and he was hidden underneath it. They had a cloth, and on the table was a bowl of fruit. Bananas, ripe bananas. So the senses are trying to enjoy separately. So from below comes the hand, and he grabs a banana and starts mushing the banana, by himself. But you can't really enjoy the banana, In other words, it's a fallacy. And of course, they gradually got weaker because they weren't feeding the stomach. So they realized, well, this isn't working. We're going on strike, but we're not getting the desired result. So they said, we better start feeding the stomach again. So the stomach is Krishna. In fact, there's a verse, Yatata Prano Bahara Chayatendriyanam. Indriyanam is the senses. Prano Upaharach means feeding the source of the life force with the stomach, the indriyas. In a similar way, when you serve Krishna, you become happy, and everyone else becomes happy. You actually become happy because you're part and parcel of Krishna. There's this nice definition of bhakti given like in this one little phrase. Let's see if I can remember it. By Jiva Goswami. Prabhupada quotes it in a purport in the second canto. It says, Bhajaniya Padama Purusha Sukha Matra Swasukatvam. And what it means is Bhajaniya means the worshipable Supreme Person, Padama Purusha. Sukha, happiness, matra, only for the happiness of the Supreme Person. Swasukatvam, finding one's soul happiness, only in giving happiness to the Supreme Worshipable Person. Now what happens when you do that? Well, since we're part and parcel of Krishna, if we're giving him pleasure, then we're also experiencing that pleasure. In other words, because we're part and parcel of Krishna, so therefore he reciprocates. He reciprocates exactly in kind. And there's no limit. It's not like, oh, he's my friend, he doesn't have time for you. No, he has time for everybody. He's infinite. Everybody has his own personal relation with Krishna, and everyone can please him in their own way, according to the rules and regulations. And everyone can feel this personal reciprocation and this bliss. So we shouldn't think that it's I'm just a slave. I'm just giving all the fruits of my labor. And what about me? Where's my happiness? It doesn't work that way. That's the whole idea. You're in a kirtan. You're just chanting the holy name. Krishna is pleased by that. That's pleasing to Krishna. You see, because you're turning your attention to him. You're glorifying him. You're dancing, and therefore that's the source of the pleasure. So that's. Why this whole, the karma yoga, giving your fruits, sacrifice, yagya. But ultimately, it puts you on a platform of being able to enjoy, eons more than trying to, covet things just for yourselves. Because there's no limit. If your happiness is simply sourced at, chanting the holy name, glorifying Krishna, Where's the limit on that? Who's stopping you? Morning, day, night, middle of the night, dreaming. You can chant those verses, you can think of Krishna, and that gives you happiness. What a liberation that is. Oh no, I have to get this, then I'll be happy. Oh my God, she doesn't love me. Oh my God, my life is useless. Krishna loves you. He'll never stop loving you. He's always your friend. So you turn your attention to Him, and you serve Him, and you direct, and you'll find yourself on the way back to God. All right, Prakriti Kriyamanani. So we shouldn't be bewildered by false ego, and we should think that we're the servants of Krishna. What is that famous verse? Mad janmanak palamidam madhukaita bhavi mat prataniya madanugrahesha eva tvad britya paricharika brityasya britya iti mam smadalokanata. Lord Chaitanya wrote a verse about das anudas. So this is a verse by Kinkula Shekhar in his Mukunda Mala Stotra. And he says, my dear Lord, please make my life successful. Madjanmanak palamidam. This is the fruit of my life that I'm praying that you please bestow upon me. Mat pratani, I'm praying from the bottom of my heart. Show mercy. Madanugra esha eva. And just consider me the servant of 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 the servant. That's really the ultimate happiness, to feel that that's going on. All right, we have time for one little poem. Here's a nice little meditation. It's not the right season right now, but you can remember the swing festival we had right around Balaram's appearance day, back in August. So that's a beautiful pastime. Krishna's swinging with Radharani, the gopis are swinging him. So there's a beautiful painting. There's several nice paintings of that. So just visualize one of them. And it says, where blooming flowers spread their sweet perfumes. You know this one? Where blooming flowers spread their sweet perfumes, where clear Yamuna flows and songbirds sing, where all the land a lovely light illumes, Shri Radha and Shri Krishna gently swing. This idol, idol, I-D-Y-L-L, means something ideal, experience. This idol of their love in Braja's bowers forever charms their dearest devotees, whose hearts Shri Krishna's sweetness overpowers, obscuring his prodigious potencies. Whatever in this world we know as love is just a shadow of the love they feel. The wise aspire to learn the secrets of devotion's path and taste that love ideal. Oh, we have time for one more. So, visualize Krishna sitting in the forest. There's a little dove on his hand, and there's a deer, and there's a cow, and there's trees in the background. So he's looking very, very beautiful. He says, the sweetness of Shri Krishna's form beguiles. Still sweeter is his face like autumn moon, but sweeter than the sweetest is his smile, whose luscious beauty makes the gopis swoon. Govinda's beauty captivates the doves, the swans, the deer, the cows, and every tree. Indeed, in Braja, every creature loves Sri Krishna and is drowned in ecstasy. That all-enchanting land is paradise, our home, where we may dwell eternally. Most welcome there are those who pay the price to learn to love Sri Krishna perfectly. So let's aspire to go there. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Tomorrow, text 28.